Hi, we're going to talk about what a mole is now, and it's not Freckles' ugly cousin. A mole is a unit of measure used in chemistry, and it's much like saying a dozen of something equals 12 of something. A mole just reflects a certain number of units of something. And the reason we need to use a mole is because even if we weighed out a small amount of something, like a couple grams, it would just have a huge number of atoms, and we can't measure atoms individually, so we need to relate atoms, how many atoms we have, to the mass that we're weighing out. And so the unit that we use when we're keeping track of this is called the mole. Right? And so a mole is the number of atoms in 12 grams of carbon-12. And remember that there are different isotopes. We have carbon-13, carbon-14, and carbon-12. So if you had 12 grams of carbon-12, you'd have a mole of carbon atoms, and that would be 6.022 times 10 to the 23 atoms. So that's a lot of atoms, but a mole is used the same way as a dozen, and then a mole equals 6.022 times 10 to the 23 units, and this is the same as saying, 1 dozen equals 12 units of something. So it's just a word that represents a number of units. And this number here, 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd, is known as Avogadro's number. And so if we look at what we're saying, if we're comparing a dozen to the word mole, if we had a dozen eggs, then that would equal 12 eggs. We're all pretty familiar with that, right? If we had a dozen carbon atoms, we would have 12 carbon atoms. Right? So that's a term that we're all familiar with, the dozen. But moving forward in chemistry, we really need to wrap our heads around this concept of a mole. So if we had 1 mole of eggs, we would have 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd eggs, and that's a heck of a lot of eggs. Or if we had 1 mole of carbon atoms, that would be the same as saying we have 6.022 times 10 to the 23 carbon atoms. Right? And so you need to probably ponder this for a while and make sure that you understand this concept of mole is the word mole just reflects 6.022 times 10 to the 23 of whatever we're talking about.